So everybody I know is a character on the show.
Right.
And it's about nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
So you're saying I go into NBC and tell them I got this idea for a show about nothing?
We go into NBC.
We? Since when are you a writer?
What writer? We're talking about a sitcom.
In the fourth season of Seinfeld, the fact of the matter is Jerry and Larry now had the license to go anywhere they wanted to go. And we were along for the ride. And we just said, you know what? Your brilliant minds will take us anywhere. Little did we know that would be right back at us.
George Shapiro had called me and said that for the new season of shows, the Larry and Jerry plan to do an arc that would chronicle how Jerry is approached by NBC to do a situation comedy.
Jerry and I had been through this experience together of developing this pilot and all that, and Jerry was playing himself on the show, so it's conceivable that the Jerry on our show could be asked by NBC to do a pilot.
What was that all about?
They said they were interested in me.
For what?
You know, TV show.
They want you to do a TV show?
Well, they want me to come up with an idea. I mean, I don't have any ideas.
Come on, how hard is that? Look at all the junk that's on TV.
This was really one of Larry's most brilliant ideas for the show, was these arcs, and this was one of the best ones, was George and Jerry trying to get this pilot on NBC. And he also had that great confidence of knowing that somehow we'd be able to sustain it. He saw that there was enough meat on that bone that it would sustain over a number of episodes.
When it was presented that season 4 was going to have an arc, and that the arc was going to be the creation of the Jerry Show, I thought we had taken a step in the wrong direction.
I was, of course, concerned that here we were doing inside baseball on a show that most people didn't know even existed.
You can't arc a whole season into a self-aggrandized, this is how we did our show? That's insane. Yeah, I really know how to launch a series. So, you know, listen to me.
So what have you two come up with?
Well, we thought about this in a variety of ways, but the basic idea is I would play myself. Go ahead.
I think I can sum up the show for you with one word. Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
What does that mean?
The show is about nothing.
What's the premise?
Well, as I was saying, I would play myself, and as a comedian living in New York, and I have a friend and a neighbor and an ex-girlfriend, which is all true.
Yeah, but nothing happens on the show. See, it's just like life.
Well, why am I watching it?
Because it's on TV.
Not yet.
The history of the Seinfeld show until the 5th season was one of constant anxiety on my part. We never seemed to get a major audience. We never seemed to win our time slot.
I don't really remember caring that much. I was just amazed that we were doing these shows, and they were turning out so well, and people really seemed to like them.
We kind of assumed that we had an audience that liked what we did, and we weren't thinking about maybe we should do things and make sure everybody gets it. And there was a little core group out there that we were playing to.
Critics all sort of woke up at the same time in liking Seinfeld and liking its uniqueness, its smartness, how clever it was.
NBC was one of the few networks that really seemed to care about critical response, more so than CBS, ABC. So when you had a show that was getting critical response, it wasn't going to keep the show on the air in the face of horrendous ratings, but if it was on the bubble, it was going to make the difference.
I was completely numb to all the dramatic ups and downs of the network saying this and that, and I remember getting calls from Glenn Padnick and Alan Horn at Castle Rock, and I remember just always hanging up the phone going, I don't know what that was about.
Jerry's point of view of it's good, of course they're going to pick it up, that sort of, you know, that permeated the set. Yeah. You know, we all sort of had that feeling. And I mean, I suppose if he'd been freaking out, running around, wringing his hands, we would have been more nervous.
I know Larry David didn't look at the numbers. Jerry may have glimpsed at them, and certainly the producers were looking very, very closely, because I know that George Shapiro or Howard West would come in and go, hey, our numbers were pretty good last week. And I go, uh-huh. You think that cinnamon roll has sugar in it?
My friend Larry Miller used to come by the set all the time, and I said to him, you know, for the life of me, I can't figure out why this show isn't really popular. He says, oh, don't worry, it will be. You know, and I said, come on. Well, we've been here 4 years, you know? We've made, whatever, 30 shows or whatever it was, and, you know, I mean, it had become like a going concern. And he kept saying to me, it's gonna catch on. I'm thinking, catch on? You know, you don't suddenly catch on, you know, after you've been out on TV for 4 years. But sure enough, he was right.
You know, you started to hear lines being repeated, or you started to hear the now famous phrase, this is such a Seinfeld moment, you know, that people would just in their life go, this is a Seinfeld moment.
I think it was Larry pointing out that agents were starting to hang around the set. And he said, that's a good sign. And I said, why? He says, because just people in Hollywood are starting to think that this is a show to be seen at. You know, it became like a place to be seen because it was this kind of cool thing that you had to know about. And so I guess there was the energy was just starting to swirl. The tornado was beginning to form.
You couldn't possibly predict, especially from those early days, that the show would be this kind of phenomena, that everyone could connect to the show on some level and be able to see their own lives in that show.
We weren't really trying to gain more attention, or we certainly weren't trying to be provocative in any way. We were just, as any TV show is, constantly struggling to come up with new ideas. And when you're struggling, bad ideas start to sound like good ideas. And crazy ideas start to sound like sane ideas. And that's what happened in season 4, is a lot of crazy ideas started to make sense.
Kramer, you've been arrested as a serial killer.
He's a bubble boy.
Who's gonna turn down a junior mint?
You double dipped the chip. She's a virgin.
They're real and they're spectacular.
Mulva. Your nipple's showing.
My wallet's gone! My wallet's gone!
It's B.O.
No! No pig!
No, everyone's gonna think we're gay.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I come home and find my son treating his body like it was an amusement park.
But are you still master of your domain?
King of the county.
Queen of the castle.
Lord of the manor.
I'm out.
The word had come down from the very first episode that fourth season that the guys were playing around with a show about masturbation. And I remember saying to Julia, yeah, it's the gun episode. They'll never get here.
I used to have this habit of writing upcoming episodes on a chalkboard in my room, and when NBC executives would come into the room after our read-throughs in Castle Rock, they would look at the board and they go, oh, what's that one? They'd see titles, and they go, what's that one? And I would, you know, give them a brief description. So for the contest, I didn't put it on the board because I didn't want them asking me about it, because I didn't want to have to explain it, because then they'd say you can't do it.
Rick Ludwin handed me a script and said, there might be a few issues this week with this episode. It's called The Contest. And I go, all right, Rick, I'm pretty busy, got a lot of stuff on my plate, so what's the deal? And Rick says, well, it's really about masturbation, and it's about who can hold out the longest. And I go, oh, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, you know what, I better read this one.
I was very, very nervous that day and filled with anxiety that they weren't going to do this show.
And the script for the contest shows up, and we do that table read.
My God, so, wow, crazy.
You knew exactly what it was about, but it was inoffensive, and he never even said the word.
My mother caught me.
Caught you? Doing what?
You know. I was alone.
You mean?
She caught you? Where?
I stopped by the house to drop the car off, and I went inside for a few minutes. Nobody was there. They're supposed to be working. My mother had a glamour magazine. I started leaving for it.
So I get on the phone with Broadcast Standards, and to my surprise, Broadcast Standards says, you know what? It's Seinfeld. we're going to have to walk lightly. We have some concerns, but we want to admit that the Seinfeld audience has a history of going places that no one's ever gone before. Clearly, they've gone somewhere that no one's ever gone before, but we're going to go along for this ride.
I think the note from the censor was that we use the word, we shouldn't use the word Snapple so often or something like that, but that was it, really.
And that episode that went on the air was absolutely the definition of water cooler television. Everybody, the next morning at work, you did not want to show up and pour yourself a cup of coffee if you hadn't seen that episode.
I am never doing that again.
What? You mean in your mother's house or all together?
All together.
Oh, give me a break.
Right.
What, you don't think I can?
No chance.
You think you could?
Well, I know I could hold out longer than you.
Care to make it interesting?
Sure, how much?
$100?
You're on.
Wait a second. Count me in on this.
You? Yeah. You'll be out before we get the check.
There were advertisers that didn't want to be in the show, but there were a lot more advertisers that didn't want to be in the show because it didn't have high enough ratings. So we weren't really losing advertisers because of it, and we weren't getting any real viewership complaints. I think the reason is because the audience of the show was narrow, and it were enthusiastic people, and they didn't have a problem with any of this. And when we have shows like that, we just leave them alone, and they sort of slug it out with their own audience. The question was always, would the audience grow?
In late 1992, I got a call one afternoon from Ted Danson. And I was excited to hear from Ted. Ted's a big star on Cheers. And like, Ted, hey, how are you doing? And he said, Warren, I've got some tough news for you. I just need to tell you that I can't be Sam anymore. I have to learn how to be Ted. I was like, what? What does that mean? He said, well, I can't do Cheers anymore.
And Warren Littlefield told us that we're going to have Seinfeld follow Cheers starting in February.
Late January, we had the Super Bowl. And we decided that the Super Bowl would be the launch pad for Seinfeld moving to Thursday night behind Cheers.
All right, we're moving the show. Here's the play. We do a zig out on Wednesday, do a post pattern past wings, button hook in front of Cheers, right behind L.A. Law, Thursday at 9:30. Got it?
Now, what's a button hook?
What's a post pattern?
What's a zig out?
All right, everybody just go along.
I spoke to a television reporter, and he said, well, you must be thrilled about this move. And I said to him, if they weren't watching on Wednesday night, I don't want them watching on Thursday night. And I was serious. I didn't.
Larry was so upset. He was just pissed. He just, I don't want to be Cheers' little brother.
A lot of critics, Time magazine for one, said the end is near for NBC. Cheers is going away. Cosby, the Golden Girls, those have gone away. NBC is on fumes. And even shows that have been the twinkle of their eye have not proven to really materialize like Seinfeld. I was like devastated. I'm like, oh man, this has got to work.
The script. Now, I've read this thing 3 times now. And every time I read it...
What?
Excuse me for a second.
What?
Would you like a Pepto-Bismol? I keep them in my wallet. You think he liked it?
I'm not sure.
I was a little concerned that people would be joining the show with no sense of the arc of the show that season involving, Jerry and George writing the pilot. At the same time, I was so absolutely thrilled about the chance to go to Thursday night and audition for the premiere time slot on television.
That was where the momentum really started. We were coming on, the Cheers audience noticed, what's this show?
And we started beating them, coming on after them, which is just not done. It's always the second show, you just try and not fall off too much.
You know what? The audience is sending us a message. This is the new show. This is the one.
That's when the show really made the biggest splash. I think we probably did our best shows that year.
Everything was just a wild guess. And it takes a while to get confident that you're guessing pretty good. And I think sometime in season 4, we realized we were guessing pretty good. Let's hear it for these kids. It was a lot of fun to go up on that stage and to win. We were, you know, I was anyway, still kind of, what's the word? I don't want to say naive, but I was full of the excitement of all these things. You know, just being on TV, and now we're winning this award and we're getting good ratings and all these new experiences, and I just thought it was all great. We started off so small. It's going to be easy to thank people because there's like 2 people to thank here that even knew we were on. I really want to thank Castle Rock, who's gone a long way at every turn to make this show work. NBC has tried really hard. Everyone has tried really hard for a really long time to get this show noticed, and it's really exciting that people do now, and we couldn't be more proud of it. I also want to thank Larry David. George Shapiro and Howard West, Rick Ludwin, Tom Sharonis, and everyone you see standing here. Our whole show. Thank you very much. We're very honored. Thank you.
Oh, that was the only time we won an Emmy for Beth's show, was that year.
You do wonder what is the feeling to have your name called and to stand up instead of sit down and fake a smile. And that's the best part about winning, is to know what that feeling is. And it's really not that much different from losing. It's a shocking, kind of very bracing moment. It's just a splash of cold water.
You never know what's going to be successful. You never know what's going to break out. You know, you go along your life in show business and you try to do good work. Some things are, you know, successful. Other things are not. But the fact that something this original and this different and unique eventually broke through says a good thing for our culture. I mean, as much as so much garbage that we see that is successful, when you have something that's of quality, that's really fine, breakthrough, that's really exciting.
And the next fall, when we moved Seinfeld to 9 o'clock on Thursday night, not only did it continue to grow, but it erupted, it exploded, and was the monster must-see hit that we needed it to be.
Yeah, at some point in the 5th season, when the show really had become meaningful to NBC, Warren Littlefield came and cooked breakfast, and for the whole crew on the set, and he was back there with flipping pancakes and making waffles and eggs and just sweating, and that's when we realized that I guess we've gotten somewhere here.